Hello and welcome everybody. It's good to see everyone here. We're checking in with a special NAMM show unveiling of the latest Ludwig artist signature snare drum. And I'm absolutely honored to be joined by a dear friend and influential drummer that got his start making waves with a band by the name of Golden. From there, completely catapulting into the mainstream with one of the most innovative acts of the last 20 years of Mars Volta. And then from there, a super group with rock icon Zach De La Rocha, and over the last 12 years now, holding down kit duties, touring the world, recording amazing records with rock titans, Queens of the Stone Age. Jon Theodore, everybody.
Oh man, thank you so much. That's the best, man. That's the best. It's the best fucking intro of all time. I appreciate it. I forgot about some of that, so it's nice to hear about it again.
Tell the people what brings you to NAMM.
I waited 50,000 years to come to the NAMM show. However, there's something so special this time around. Through the grace of my friend Uli Salazar and the Ludwig Drum Company, we're here today to unveil this beast of a snare drum, the Revelation, that we've spent years researching and making, and it's finally ready for us to unleash today.
Jon is not only known for his technical playing and powerful playing, but I think one of the things that makes him such an influential drummer is his sound. So where did your sound really start when it comes to Ludwig, especially starting with snare drums?
Certainly the inspiration and influence of John Bonham and the Supraphonic. The first time I hit a Supraphonic, I think it was pretty life-changing. So that's always been my center for what a snare drum is supposed to sound like.
So tell us about how the conversation and the process really began as we started to explore tone and sounds that were more signature to what you were looking for.
Well, I guess the story started when we met through our good friend Dave Turnkrantz. He was like, hey, this is Uli from Ludwig. And I was like, just the man I'm looking for because I need some Vista lights. And then you were like, well, I got them. With that set, you gave me a couple new Supraphonics. The issue was that once I joined Queens, that's a situation where the music demands a little more control from the snare specifically.
Totally.
And so I remember the first couple conversations were about maybe trying to figure out how to make something that sounded like a Supraphonic with a moon gel on it. I wanted it to be like controlled attack that was still ferocious.
The conversation really first started in material. What's the right material, what's the right thickness, what's the right profile? And I think all of a sudden the chrome over brass started speaking a little bit more to what you were doing.
Once we found our way to the brass, then it became clear that we were in the right zone, And then it just became about these sexy finishes. The nickel on the shell is very antique. It's a dignified finish, I would say. But then the hoops and the lugs are dipped in that super high gloss nickel, which gives it a good kind of contrast. The badge, I don't know if you guys can see, it's the classic blue olive 70s badge, but like they got to add my name in there, which to me is like,
Yeah, rethought there for the first time ever. We've never done an artist signature blue olive badge, and this one's got a different colorway with a black background. It's a vibe.
I couldn't think up a better looking drum.
What's on the underside of that shell?
There's a sticker inside the shell, which was an old Ludwig thing from the 60s and 70s, and I signed them all, which was crazy because you never know how hard it is to sign a whole bunch of things in a row because it gets really weird. So there wasn't one time when I didn't think and feel in my brain and my body and my soul that this is the most special thing that's ever happened to me. And so I'm honored and completely proud to have every single one of these have a sticker with a signature and a date on it that I actually signed at my house on my table, so with a pen, analog.
Let's get into specs on the wires and heads. I think it's very signature you as far as the way you set up your snare on the road.
Yeah, this is actually what I always use. I use these 30 strand.
Yeah, super 30.
30 strand wire, just because, especially when you start to deaden a drum, you need the extra wires for the sensitivity to make it a little bit more, pronounced. So I feel like it gives a slight bit of control to the bottom head.
Totally.
It's the sound I hear in my head when I think of a snare drum. So we were lucky enough to be able to have this drum come in the box with these wires and this throw off, which is the
P88. New
P88,
yeah.
which has all the best parts of the old school one, but it has a ratcheting tensioner knob, so it can't rattle apart. So it's a real workhorse. And the butt plate, it's got a sturdy connection, so you can really crank it down, and you can make sure the wires aren't going to slip. And then it comes with, of course, the ubiquitous black dot.
Nice balance of attack and control.
We talked about it and decided that we should have it come from the factory the way that I would want to have it.
Yeah, totally. Well, what I love about the opportunity to have this sit down with you, Jon, the conversation for you guys to get to know a little bit more about the process behind this drum. And so when it comes down...
This is Chuck Mangione back here.
When it comes down
so
to the brass snare drum lineup at Ludwig, you know, there's a variety of different finish options that we offer, whether it's a Black Beauty, which is black nickel plated, a Super Brass, which is just a high polished brass shell with a lacquer over it, or an acro brass that's brushed. And again, at the end of the day, even though they're brass, however you work them, you add or subtract, they're going to have something and do something a little bit different. When it comes down to a Black Beauty, there's sort of like a copper primer coat that goes on, like a base coat. And we noticed that that particular component added a little bit more mid-range than you really kind of cared for. So we were now trying to find a finish that didn't require that copper base, but still something that looked rad. And we found this awesome antique nickel finish that just goes directly over the polished brass. When we first delivered you the first prototype during pretty much the start of the End is Nero tour.
Yeah.
And what was your first reaction when I brought that drum?
I mean, you could imagine it was like the first show of the tour, and I got out there, and Uli was like, "The drum is ready. Bring it out there." And so Uli showed up and like parted the crowd with the case.
I didn't come in on a horse, though.
I was like, "Yo!"
Oh, it's a sexy beast. It's already a sexy beast. Oh!
And I just remember we started the show, and like it was like a half a verse in. I remember I was like,
yeah, he was turning to me, and then the band was turning around too, and they're like, yo.
I was so stoked, and I was like, it was just, in that moment, it was so triumphant because that was the culmination of years, along with the birth of my children. That was like, man, that was a really special moment.
The Detroit show was just still one piece of the puzzle to complete it. Once we kind of figured out, again, shell type, finish type, it was really testing the quality of the finish and kind of putting it through pressure testing as far as, you know, can it maintain the look.
I don't know if anybody's ever seen me play drums before, but it like there's a lot of sweat and like drool and blood, and so there was a gauntlet that this shell had to go through. It needed to like stand up to the absolute beating it was going to take. And it did, and it didn't tarnish, it didn't chip, it didn't pit, and so another pretty great day where we knew that was it.
Before we end, tell the folks what you got planned for the year, where they can find you.
The band has been off for a while as we've been getting healthy. There have been some invigorations going on, but we've been writing a lot. We're working on new music now. We're in a pretty good spot right now. Like the juices are flowing and the vibes are high, and then we'll be back on the road in the summer, hopefully in a town close by you guys. It's a little bit of States touring, and then Europe for the summer, and then on into the fall. There'll be more touring in the U.S. in the fall, so we're getting it all back together. We're putting the band back together. We're going to get into it.
Busy year. You're going to see a lot of the Revelation snare drum out in the wild. We're super proud of this release. It is available now through any retailer worldwide, shipping worldwide. So be sure to check it out, and let's keep the vibes going.